I've traveled the world. I've been in launch control rooms as rockets pierced the sky, sat across tables from leaders who shape nations, and walked through factories where machines hum like living giants. But sometimes, the most profound moments don't happen in boardrooms or space centers. They happen in silence. I remember one evening. I was in Europe, in an old city. The streets were narrow. The stones beneath my feet were worn smooth by centuries of footsteps. I had just finished a long day of meetings and filming for a documentary project. I was tired, jet-lagged, and honestly, I just wanted to shut everything off for a while. I wandered into a small chapel, not because I was looking for God, but because I was looking for quiet. The wooden pews creaked as I sat down. The smell of candle wax and old stone filled the air. My phone buzzed in my pocket, but I ignored it. For a moment, it was just me in silence. And that's when it happened. Before I take you deeper into this, let me ask you something before we go deeper. Tell me in the comments, which country and city are you watching from? And what time is it for you right now? Because what I'm about to share, it's not just my story, it's a warning. And it's a call. The air shifted. The stillness became heavy, not oppressive but holy. The flicker of a candle grew brighter, stretching until it filled the whole chapel with golden light. I froze. My chest tightened. My heart raced like when a rocket ignites. Only this was different. I wasn't in control. And then I saw him, Jesus. Not in a painting, not in imagination, but alive, radiant. His eyes were flames of love and truth. His presence, overwhelming. He spoke my name, Elon. And when he said it, I felt every layer of my identity, inventor, entrepreneur, father, melt away. I was simply a man standing before eternity. His voice carried both tenderness and authority. I have called you, not for Mars, but for my kingdom. I have given you vision for stars, but you have neglected the oil for your lamp. I broke. In his presence, achievements felt weightless. Awards, rockets, Tesla cars, meaningless. And then he began to teach me. Jesus looked at me and said, "Many think they are mine because they follow traditions, but they have not been born again. Elon, you must be converted, not conformed." His words struck me like a thunderclap, yet they were spoken with such tenderness that I could not turn away. I realized in that moment how easy it is to confuse activity for intimacy, motion for transformation. I had been surrounded by religion in small glimpses throughout my life, but I never allowed it to truly pierce me. Now, in his presence, every layer of pretense was stripped away, and I could not hide behind culture, success, or even curiosity. I thought about the countless people who attend gatherings, repeat prayers or light candles, believing that ritual alone secures their standing with God. But Jesus' eyes cut through all of that, as if to say, that is not enough. He was calling me to something deeper, not a lifestyle of external performance, but a rebirth that reshapes the very core of who I am. His voice carried the weight of eternity, and suddenly I understood that convention cannot substitute for conversion. My mind flashed to Matthew 25:1-13, the story of the wise and foolish virgins. Some brought oil, others did not. Outwardly, they all looked the same. They all carried lamps. They all waited for the bridegroom. They all appeared ready. But when the midnight cry came, only those who were prepared could enter. That parable became alive in front of me. Jesus wasn't just reminding me of Scripture, he was showing me my reflection in it. I saw myself in those foolish virgins. My lamp was there, but it was empty. I had innovation, vision, and human brilliance, but I lacked the oil of his Spirit. The thought burned within me, what good is a lamp without fire? What good is potential without power? All my achievements felt like lamps without oil, impressive on the outside, but powerless when the darkness falls. He stepped closer and asked me, "Is your lamp burning or is it empty?" His question echoed, not just in the chapel but inside my chest. It was as if the whole universe had paused to hear my answer. I realized that I couldn't hide behind excuses. I couldn't point to what I had built, or the lives my inventions touched, or even the good intentions buried beneath my flaws. His eyes were asking about my heart, not my resume. The emptiness of my lamp revealed the danger of living on substitutes. I had been burning on ambition, on intellect, on human drive. But those fuels run out, and they cannot pierce the midnight of eternity. Jesus was offering me the only oil that lasts, the Spirit that sustains when the world collapses. The more I thought of it, the more I trembled because I realized how fragile I truly was. I thought of people across the world who might also be living this way, lamps in hand, but no flame within, families gathering in churches, voices rising in songs, yet hearts untouched by the fire of God, people satisfied with tradition, but not transformed by truth. I felt the weight of their condition as if it mirrored mine, and I knew that his question wasn't for me alone. The air grew heavier as I wrestled with the truth. I wanted to argue, to defend myself, but his love disarmed me. His presence dismantled every wall. It wasn't anger that confronted me, but love that refused to leave me unchanged. His tone carried both warning and invitation. He wasn't simply exposing my emptiness, he was offering to fill me. My chest ached as I tried to comprehend it. I had spent years searching the skies, building ships to reach other planets, but I had neglected to prepare my soul for the journey that truly mattered. I had obsessed over tomorrow's technology, yet ignored the eternal cry at the door. In that moment, eternity felt closer than Mars, and the midnight cry felt louder than the applause of nations. His words replayed over and over, "Elon, you must be converted, not conformed." And I knew that he was speaking to the deepest part of me, the part no one sees. It wasn't about carrying a lamp in public, but having oil in private. It wasn't about looking prepared, but being prepared. It wasn't about religion, but about rebirth. And I sat there, trembling under the weight of his gaze, realizing that convention had deceived me, but conversion could save me. He knelt. Yes, the Lord of Glory knelt beside me. The weight of that moment broke something deep inside of me. The one before whom every knee will bow, the King of Kings, lowered himself to the dust beside me. His robe brushed the stone floor, his presence so near I could feel the warmth of his breath. My mind could not comprehend it. The creator of galaxies, the one who holds every star in place, humbling himself in front of me. It was not weakness, but majesty clothed in humility, a love that chose to stoop down to where I was rather than demand I rise to where I could not go. "Lay down every crown, every plan, every fear," he said. His words carried weight that stripped away my defenses. I had worn many crowns in this life, crowns of innovation, success, recognition, power. They glittered in the eyes of the world, but in that moment they felt like dust in my hands. What were rockets and cars and wealth when compared to his eternal reign? Each crown became a symbol of self-rule, of the life I had built on my own terms, and he was asking me to surrender them. Repent not only of sin but of self-rule. He continued. That pierced me more deeply than anything else. I had always thought repentance was about moral failures, about visible mistakes. But here was Jesus, revealing the root beneath the surface, the throne of my own heart. I had lived as if I were my own king, my own savior, my own master. I had repented of wrong actions before, but I had never repented of ruling myself. He was asking me to dethrone myself and enthrone him. "I must reign in you." That sentence rang through my soul like the final note of a symphony. Not just reign over the stars, not just reign over the nations, but reign in me. His kingdom was not distant but near, not abstract but personal. He was not after my inventions, he was after my heart. The universe seemed to pause as those words sank in, and I realized the greatest battle was not out there among the planets but in here, within my own will. I thought about how tightly I had clutched control. Every decision, every project, every plan had to be under my grip. I trusted data, calculations, and probabilities, but I struggled to trust the unseen hand of God. Even my concept of eternity had been shaped by my desire to control outcomes, to build solutions, to engineer escape. But eternity is not engineered, it is surrendered to. And he was asking me to let go. The images of my life passed before me. Meetings where I had hidden fear behind bold vision. Nights where I stared into the sky searching for meaning in the stars. Moments where I told myself I was in control. But in his light, I saw that control was an illusion. My hands had been clenched around the steering wheel of a car I could not truly drive. He was asking me to open those hands, to release not only the direction of my life, but the destiny of my soul. The struggle inside me was fierce. Part of me wanted to hold on, to argue that surrender meant weakness, that letting go meant failure. But in his eyes, I saw something different. Surrender was not losing, it was winning. It was not giving up, it was giving over. It was releasing the small throne of self to receive the unshakable kingdom of Christ. And though my pride resisted, my heart longed for the freedom he was offering. The silence of the chapel seemed to amplify his words. Each flicker of candlelight reminded me of the crowns I needed to lay down. Each breath I took felt like an invitation to yield. I could feel his hand gently resting on mine, not forcing, not demanding, but inviting me to trust. And in that gentleness was an authority that made my excuses vanish. He was not asking because he needed my surrender. He was asking because I needed it. My chest grew heavy as I faced the truth. I had been living as if my story was mine alone, as if I were the author and finisher of my destiny. But now I saw the folly of it. My plans, however brilliant, were fragile. My fears, however hidden, controlled me more than I wanted to admit. My crowns, however glittering, were empty. The only safe place for them was at his feet. In that pause, I felt the weight of eternity pressing on me. My lips trembled with words I could not form. My mind, always so sharp and calculated, stumbled to find logic here. But my heart knew the truth's surrender was the doorway. It was not about giving him part of me, but all of me. It was not about holding on a little longer, but about finally letting go. And though my body remained on that chapel floor, my soul was being pulled toward a throne higher than any I had ever pursued. Jesus stood and his robe glowed brighter, and the brilliance that radiated from him was unlike any light I had ever known. It wasn't harsh like the blinding glare of machinery or sterile like the cold brightness of LEDs. It was living, breathing light that carried warmth and conviction all at once. His very presence exposed the places in me I had carefully hidden from others. No achievement, no mask, no title could shield me now. He looked at me with eyes that saw through the facade and he spoke. You hide your emptiness behind innovation, but I call you to holiness. Not perfection, but purity of heart, a vessel I can fill. His words stripped away the illusion I had lived under for so long. I thought my brilliance, my contributions to technology, and my attempts to push humanity forward were enough to define me. I believed progress could conceal the hollow spaces of my soul, but in that moment, it became painfully clear that innovation was my disguise, not my cure. Behind the rockets and the electric cars, behind the headlines and the accolades, there was a heart that was empty of the only thing that truly mattered. As he spoke of holiness, I realized I had misunderstood the word my whole life. I had imagined holiness as unreachable perfection, as religious rigidity, as something meant only for saints and mystics. But his definition was different. Holiness was not flawless performance but undivided devotion. It was purity of heart, a willingness to be clean and open, a vessel he himself could fill. He was not demanding impossible standards but inviting me into wholeness, into the life I was made for. Revelation 3:22 came alive in front of me, not as ancient text but as living fire. Because you are lukewarm, neither hot nor cold, I am about to spit you out of my mouth. Those words echoed like thunder in my chest. I had been lukewarm. I wanted enough of God to feel safe, but not enough to be consumed. Enough to admire him from a distance, but not enough to surrender to his fire. My life was a mixture, flashes of passion buried under layers of compromise. The lukewarmness was everywhere in me. I saw it in the way I spoke about God in public, carefully measured so as not to offend. I saw it in my private life, where prayer was a rare whisper rather than a steady flame. I saw it in how easily I chased distractions rather than dwelling in his presence. And he was showing me that lukewarm faith does not satisfy him. It grieves him. It makes him sick. His love was too fierce to settle for half my heart. I felt the weight of his call. Holiness was not about retreating from the world or abandoning purpose. It was about allowing him to refine me, to cleanse the motives behind every action. It was about walking in transparency before him, no longer hiding emptiness behind the shell of brilliance. It was about becoming a dwelling place where his spirit could live freely. The emptiness I had covered with achievements could be transformed into space he could fill with himself. His glowing robe seemed to illuminate the hidden corners of my life. Every compromise, every divided loyalty, every secret attempt to keep control was laid bare. And yet, in the light, I did not feel condemnation but invitation. He was not there to expose me, to shame me, but to uncover me so he could heal me. The fire in his presence was not meant to destroy but to purify, to burn away the dross so only the gold would remain. I thought of how many people live as I had. Busy, successful, applauded, yet lukewarm in spirit. People hiding behind careers, families, reputations, or even ministry, while the flame of holiness flickers weakly within. I realized how dangerous that condition is, because it feels safe while it is deadly. Lukewarmness deceives us into thinking we are fine when, in truth, we are drifting away, and Jesus, in his mercy, was confronting me so that I would not be deceived any longer. The more he spoke, the more my heart burned. Holiness was not about reaching up with human strength, but about yielding down in surrender. It was about letting his spirit ignite what my efforts could never sustain. He was showing me that hiding emptiness only multiplies it, but exposing it to his light transforms it. For the first time, I saw holiness not as a burden but as freedom, not as distance but as intimacy, not as perfection but as purity of love. As his robe glowed brighter, I felt both undone and remade. The lukewarmness that had marked me was being confronted by a fire that could not be ignored. His call was clear. I could no longer hide behind innovation, reputation, or ambition. He was asking for holiness, a heart emptied of pretense and filled with him alone. And in that holy presence, the meaning of my life began to shift, not toward what I could build with my hands, but toward what he could build within me. You do not need rituals, Elon. You need me. Walk with me daily. Speak to me as friend to friend. My cross was not for a religion, it was for your heart. His words were gentle yet thunderous, dismantling every idea I had built about what knowing God meant. For years I had thought in terms of systems, structures, and frameworks. Even when it came to spirituality, my mind gravitated toward processes, toward building something organized and measurable. But in that moment, Jesus was telling me plainly that he was not a system to be analyzed or a ritual to be performed. He was a person to be known, a savior to be loved, a friend to be walked with. His presence drew closer, and the space between us seemed to dissolve. There was no altar rail separating us, no distance like the formal halls of power where people are kept at arm's length. He was near, so near that his voice felt like it was inside my heart rather than outside my ears. The nearness of Jesus was unlike anything I had experienced before. It was both awe-inspiring and disarming. This was not a God who demanded ladders of effort to reach him. This was a God who descended to walk beside me. I thought of all the times I had seen religion from a distance and dismissed it because it felt empty, mechanical, or hypocritical. And yet, here was Jesus, distinguishing himself from everything I had associated with that word. You do not need rituals, he said, as if cutting through centuries of misunderstanding. He was not against reverence or discipline. He was against replacing relationship with routine. He wanted my heart, not my performance. As he spoke, memories surfaced of childhood moments when I had felt a flicker of something transcendent, but I had buried it under logic and ambition. I had been taught prayers, ceremonies, traditions, all well-meaning, but none of them had pierced me like this. I had pursued knowledge of the universe but neglected knowledge of the one who made it. Now he was standing before me, making it clear that his cross was not built to create a religion but to open a door. I felt his nearness deepen, and with it came an unfamiliar ease. This was not like addressing an impersonal force or an unapproachable monarch. This was like being with someone who truly knew me, someone I could speak to without rehearsing words. The formality I had unconsciously adopted began to crumble. My instinct to measure, to impress, to calculate vanished in his gaze. He was inviting me to friendship, not the casual kind, but the kind that changes who you are. Images of my life flashed before me. Meetings filled with pressure, interviews where my words were calculated, relationships where I still held parts of myself back. I realized that I had lived compartmentalized. Some people knew one side of me, others another, but no one had all of me. Yet here was Jesus, asking for all of me and offering all of himself. In his eyes there was no transaction, only invitation. Walk with me, speak to me, live with me. The more he spoke, the more I realized how different this was from what I had imagined faith to be. Religion had always looked like a ladder. Steps to climb, boxes to check, rituals to maintain. Relationship looked like a path, one that he walked with me step by step every day. Religion demanded I bring offerings to earn favor. Relationship revealed that favor was already offered through his cross. Religion kept God distant. Relationship brought him near. His nearness began to undo the walls I had built. In that closeness, I felt seen not as an icon or a headline, but as a person. He saw the hidden fears, the private hopes, the unspoken doubts. He did not recoil. Instead, his presence drew closer, his voice softer yet deeper. This was intimacy without manipulation, friendship without agenda, love without condition. And the more I felt it, the more I realized how hungry I had been for it all along. I thought of the people who might also be caught in the cycle I had lived in, doing spiritual things without ever encountering the one they were meant for. People who go through motions but never meet the Master. People who carry his name but never hear his voice. My heart ached as I realized how much he wanted relationship, not religion with each of them. His cross was not built to create institutions but to open hearts, to bridge the chasm between the holy and the human. And suddenly, I felt his nearness, not distant, but intimate. It wasn't a feeling that came and went, it was a reality that began to wrap around me. The sense of being alone, of carrying everything myself, of always needing to calculate the next move began to lift. In its place was the quiet assurance that I could walk with him, not just in a chapel moment but in every ordinary moment. At a launch site, in a meeting, on a quiet drive at night. He was not calling me to a ritual but to a relationship, to live every day in the light of his presence, speaking and listening, as friend to friend. His eyes pierced me with a gaze that felt like fire and water at the same time, burning away excuses, yet cleansing me of the weight I carried. You fear the opinions of men more than you fear me. But I call you to courage, stand. Speak truth. Do not dilute my words for applause. His voice carried no hesitation, no room for negotiation. It was as if he had reached into the deepest recesses of my heart and named the chains I had kept hidden from even myself. I had faced hostile crowds, risked billions on ventures that could collapse, and stood against critics who mocked me for dreaming too big. Yet here he was showing me that my boldness in the world was fragile compared to the courage he required of me. The memories came rushing in, boardrooms where I had softened convictions because I didn't want to alienate investors, conversations where I swallowed truth to protect relationships, interviews where I offered safe answers, rather than risking the ridicule that honesty might bring. I saw myself dodging questions that could expose my beliefs, wrapping my words in caution instead of clarity. Every compromise, every hesitation, every moment I had chosen approval over obedience came back like a flood. And the weight of his eyes told me he had seen them all. Fear of man had been a quiet master in my life. I had told myself it was wisdom, strategy, diplomacy. But he exposed it for what it truly was: fear. A fear that disguised itself as prudence but was really bondage. I could stand against financial risk, engineering challenges, and scientific impossibilities. But I shrank at the thought of losing favor in the eyes of people. That fear had shaped my decisions more than I wanted to admit, and now he was calling me out of it. His words, stand, speak truth, echoed through my being. It wasn't simply about bravery in a general sense. It was about refusing to compromise his message for the sake of applause. Truth, unaltered and undiluted, is what he was asking me to carry. And truth, by its very nature, divides. Some would receive it with joy, but others would resist it with hostility. Courage meant accepting both outcomes, not bending to gain one while avoiding the other. It meant being willing to be misunderstood, rejected, even despised, if it meant staying faithful to him. As I stood in his presence, I realized that every person I had feared, critics, executives, journalists, politicians, they all fade in the light of his majesty. Their approval is fleeting, their power temporary, their influence small compared to his eternal authority. And yet, how many times had I chosen their fleeting favor over his eternal truth? My compromise looked small in the moment, but in his presence it loomed large, showing how easily I had traded courage for comfort. I began to feel the pull of his call, the kind of courage that does not come from human strength, but from knowing whose presence you carry. Courage was not about becoming reckless or confrontational. It was about standing firm in truth no matter the cost. It was about speaking words that may tremble on your lips, but still align with his heart. It was about valuing his "well done" more than the applause of 1,000 men. The silence of the chapel seemed to amplify his challenge. Every flicker of candlelight looked like a reminder of voices waiting outside, voices that would question, mock, or twist his words if I dared to repeat them. And yet, each flame also felt like a call to burn brighter, to refuse compromise, to let light expose the darkness rather than dimming it for the comfort of others. I realized that courage is costly, but compromise is deadly. Compromise erodes faith, weakens conviction, and silences the witness of those who are meant to shine. I thought of people watching me, looking for direction, weighing every word I say. What would it mean if I spoke his truth without fear? It could cost me credibility in some circles, but it could awaken others to life. It could shut doors of influence in the world, but it could open doors of eternity for souls who were searching. Courage wasn't about saving my reputation. It was about stewarding his message faithfully, no matter the cost. His piercing eyes never wavered, and in them I saw both challenge and love. He wasn't condemning me for my fear, he was calling me out of it. His voice was not the voice of a tyrant demanding allegiance, but of a king who had already given his life for me. He was not asking me to be strong on my own. He was offering his strength to stand, his spirit to embolden, his presence to sustain. Courage was not something I had to manufacture. It was something I had to receive by faith. And in that moment, I felt the clash between two worlds. The world of compromise that promised safety but delivered emptiness, and the world of courage that promised risk but delivered life. His call was clear: no more dilution, no more hiding, no more bending truth for comfort. He was asking me to stand, to speak, to live with a fear of God greater than the fear of man. And though my heart trembled, I knew that his courage was stronger than my fear, and his call was louder than the applause of the world. He held out a lamp, simple yet weighty with meaning, and when I looked into it I saw it was empty. Not a drop of oil remained, not a flicker of flame rose from its wick. He lifted it before me, and his voice carried both sorrow and urgency. This is you without my spirit. You cannot face the midnight cry without oil. Be filled daily. Word and prayer. The words struck me with more force than any failure I had ever endured, because this was not about business or ambition, but about eternity. The emptiness of the lamp mirrored the emptiness within me, the hollowness of striving without the substance of his presence. As he spoke, I remembered the parable of the 10 virgins, and how only those with oil entered in when the cry at midnight was heard. The others, though outwardly prepared, were left outside. It wasn't enough to have lamps, they had to have oil. It wasn't enough to have appearances, they had to have substance. And in his hand was a picture of me, a lamp with potential but no power, a vessel designed to shine but incapable of producing light. I felt the weight of what it meant to live empty, to face the hour of testing without the very thing that would sustain me. 1 Thessalonians 5:7-8 came alive in my heart, as if written on the walls of the chapel. For you yourselves are fully aware that the day of the Lord will come like a thief in the night. The words echoed with clarity. People cry, peace and security, but sudden destruction comes. The passage warned of those who sleep in darkness, contrasted with those awake in the light, and the call was unmistakable: to be sober, to be watchful, to be filled. My empty lamp was not simply an image of lack, it was a warning of danger, a glimpse of what it would mean to face the coming night unprepared. The lamp became a mirror for my life. I thought of how much I had built: rockets, cars, systems that changed industries. But none of them could ignite the oil of the Spirit within me. No amount of innovation could substitute for intimacy with Him. No breakthrough in technology could replace the breakthrough of a heart on fire with His presence. All my achievements, stacked high as towers, could not light one wick in the kingdom. Without oil I was empty. Without oil I was powerless. Without oil I was unready. And He made it clear that the oil was not something I could borrow at the last moment. It was not something handed over casually by someone else when the cry goes out. Oil had to be gathered daily, stored through faithfulness, cultivated through word and prayer. It meant a life of abiding, not a moment of scrambling. It meant consistency over convenience, discipline over distraction. I realized how many mornings I had rushed past the word, how many nights I had collapsed without prayer, and how much of my lamp had gone neglected while I pursued everything else. The emptiness was sobering, but His words were also an invitation. Be filled daily, He said, not as a command to crush me, but as a path to restore me. Daily filling meant I did not have to remain empty. Daily filling meant there was oil available, overflowing, if only I would come. His Spirit was not rationed or scarce, it was abundant, poured out for those who seek. The question was not whether He would provide, but whether I would make room to receive. Oil is not gathered by accident, it is gathered with intention. I thought of how many people live with lamps polished and beautiful, but without oil inside. Outward success can mask inward emptiness for a while, but when the midnight cry comes, the truth is revealed. The flame cannot be faked. Light cannot be imitated. Either the oil is there or it is not. And I realized that all my outward accomplishments could make me admired, but only oil could make me ready. Without the Spirit, I was a vessel without purpose, a lamp without light. The echo of Scripture urged me to wake up, to shake off the illusion of safety. So then let us not sleep as others do, but let us keep awake and be sober. Sobriety was more than clear thinking. It was a life anchored in His presence, filled with His Spirit, ready for His coming. The emptiness of the lamp was not meant to shame me, but to awaken me. To live without oil was to live in danger. To live with oil was to live prepared, empowered, and unafraid of the hour to come. As I gazed at the empty lamp, I realized it was not simply about eternity, but about now. Oil is not only for the final cry at midnight, it is for the daily battles, the moments of temptation, the tests that come when no one is watching. Without oil, even the smallest storm could extinguish me. But with oil, even the darkest night could not overcome me. His call was not just to survive the last day, but to live every day with light that would not go out. And so the lamp in His hand stood as both a warning and a promise, a warning of what I had been, empty, unprepared, fragile, a promise of what I could become, filled, burning, steadfast. Oil was the difference, oil was the invitation, oil was the only way forward. The Spirit, the Word, and prayer were not accessories to life, they were life itself. And without them I was nothing more than an empty lamp, waiting in vain for a flame that would never come. He spoke, and His words cut deeper than any review or rebuke I had ever heard on earth. Your eyes are fixed on planets, but what is Mars compared to my kingdom? What is colonizing the stars if your soul is unprepared? It was as though every dream, every plan, every goal I had carried for decades suddenly shrank in His presence. I had looked at the night sky countless times, tracing trajectories, envisioning colonies, designing futures beyond Earth. Yet in that moment, even the vastness of space felt small. Eternity stretched before me, endless and immeasurable, and my ambitions felt like dust carried away by a passing wind. I saw flashes of my life's work, rockets piercing the atmosphere, spacecrafts orbiting the Earth, prototypes of habitats meant for Mars. These had always felt like the pinnacle of human achievement, like symbols of legacy and vision. But in the light of His presence, they appeared fragile, temporary, like sandcastles at the edge of an ocean that never stops advancing. No matter how high the towers of innovation reached, they could not break the horizon of eternity, and the realization pierced me. Even if humanity reached every star, without Him we would still be lost. I remembered the Scripture, "For what does it profit a man to gain the whole world and forfeit his soul?" Those words had always seemed metaphorical to me, poetic even, but now they rang literal, direct, undeniable. What would it profit me to gain Mars, to gain the planets, to gain the admiration of generations yet unborn, if my own soul was unprepared for the only kingdom that lasts? The kingdom He spoke of was not theoretical or symbolic. It was more real than any world my rockets could touch. Its laws did not bow to physics. Its borders were not marked by stars. It had no end. He showed me, not with charts or numbers, but with a single glance, how short time really is. The decades I thought of as long, the centuries of human progress I celebrated, the thousands of years of civilization, they were nothing compared to the endless stretch of eternity. Even Mars, even interstellar travel, even the greatest achievements of humanity were a breath, a vapor, a shadow compared to the substance of His kingdom. My whole framework for measuring significance began to crack. The question was no longer how far humanity could go, but where my own heart was anchored. I trembled as I thought of the hours I had invested, the nights I had stayed awake solving problems for futures that might never come, while neglecting the eternal present of His presence. How easily my eyes had been fixed on horizons of my own making, while neglecting the horizon that never moves, eternity. He wasn't condemning space exploration, He was exposing misplaced worship. He wasn't rejecting innovation, He was calling for alignment. Eternity was not an obstacle to my dreams, it was the measure of my dreams. I began to see the contrast between the temporary and the eternal in sharper colors. The rockets I built would one day corrode. The colonies I dreamed of would one day crumble. The legacy I tried to secure would one day be forgotten. But a single soul transformed, a single heart surrendered, a single life anchored in His kingdom would outlast planets, outlast galaxies, outlast time itself. Eternity was not a concept to admire but a reality to prepare for. He spoke again, quieter this time, yet it echoed louder than before. You were made for more than exploration. You were made for communion. You were not created to drift endlessly through space, but to dwell endlessly in me. The truth of that shattered me. I had thought of destiny as distance, as movement, as the next frontier. But he revealed destiny as presence, his presence. My hands that had reached for stars were meant first to reach for him. My mind that charted galaxies was meant first to meditate on his word. My soul that longed for other worlds was meant first to long for his. The weight of eternity began to rearrange my priorities. It was not a call to abandon the work, but to reframe it, to let every blueprint, every project, every launch be held lightly compared to the weight of his kingdom. Eternity made me question motives. Why I wanted to go, what I wanted to build, what I hoped to leave behind. Eternity made me see that even the boldest vision is incomplete if it ignores the one who holds the stars in his hands. Eternity made me realize how short the runway of time really is, how urgent preparation really is. I felt small but not crushed, convicted but not condemned. His words did not humiliate, they awakened. Eternity is not meant to shame but to anchor. Eternity does not shrink dreams, it purifies them. It is not wrong to look at the stars, but it is deadly to look at them without seeing the one who spoke them into being. My hands trembled because I knew he was not asking me to stop looking at Mars. He was asking me to start looking at him. And in that trembling, a shift began inside me. I saw the difference between a life aimed at Earth, a life aimed at planets, and a life aimed at eternity. The first two could be measured by headlines and history books. The last could only be measured by heaven. I knew that the lamp he had shown me before needed oil for more than survival. It needed oil for direction, for focus, for eternity. The question was no longer how far I could go, but who I would become on the way. Eternity was not distant, it was already here, pressing against the edges of time, calling me to lift my eyes beyond the red soil of Mars to the golden streets of his kingdom. Finally, he spoke with a weight that seemed to press the very air around me. His voice neither loud nor harsh, but filled with an authority that no earthly power could imitate. The hour is late, my return is near. Do not delay. Do not assume tomorrow. Today is the day of surrender. The words didn't just enter my ears, they resonated through my bones. It was as though time itself paused, holding its breath, while eternity leaned in. Everything inside me wanted to argue, to ask for more time, to hold on to the illusion of later. But his gaze left no room for delay. In his eyes, later didn't exist, only now did. The golden light around him flickered like the last rays of a setting sun. Yet even as it dimmed, it revealed more clearly than ever the truth of my own heart. I had always believed there would be time to think, time to prepare, time to decide. But now that belief was shattered. Do not assume tomorrow rang in my ears like a bell tolling at midnight. It wasn't a threat, it was a reality. Time, as I had known it, was fragile. All my careful calculations, all my long-range plans, all my projections for decades ahead suddenly felt like sketches on sand. I thought about how easily delay had become my language, how often I had postponed inner surrender while accelerating outer progress. I had pushed rockets forward while pushing repentance back. I had launched projects quickly while postponing prayer indefinitely. In the silence of the chapel, every postponed moment rose before me like a mountain, each delay revealing itself as a kind of self-deception. Delay always whispered, "One more day," but the Lord's voice cut through, "Today." And in that moment I understood urgency not as panic, but as clarity. His call to not delay was not a call to scramble in fear, but to step into reality. The hour was late, yes, but his invitation was still open. The lateness did not diminish his mercy, it heightened it. It meant I could no longer hide behind the illusion of endless time. The truth was not that he was impatient, but that eternity was unmovable. The day of surrender was not tomorrow, not someday, but now, always now. The golden light that had surrounded him began to fade, but even as it faded it left an imprint, like sunlight burned into film. The chapel, which had seemed otherworldly, returned to its quiet stillness. The wooden pews were ordinary again, the stone floor cool and familiar under my knees. But I was not the same. The fading light didn't feel like loss, it felt like commission. His words still hung in the air, vibrating through the silence like a chord that never resolved. I could hear my own heartbeat, heavy and slow, as though my body was trying to keep time with eternity. The The silence after his voice felt vast, but it wasn't empty. It was full of decision, full of possibility. He had not left me with commands to perform, he had left me with a choice. Delay had always felt safe, like a cushion against discomfort. But in the silence, delay felt like a cliff edge. Urgency was no longer an emotion, it was reality itself. I thought of all the people who live in the illusion of delay, how we scroll, how we plan, how we say, someday, unaware of how late the hour really is. His words rang not only for me but for millions. Do not assume tomorrow. I could see their faces in my mind, the engineers, the investors, the dreamers, the skeptics, all of us busy with our projects while the clock of eternity ticks on, unbothered by our schedules. It wasn't just my story, it was humanity's. The chapel around me seemed to pulse with an unseen heartbeat, a reminder that the world itself is on a countdown. The silence pressed in like a gentle weight, forcing me to sit with the truth I had been shown. Urgency was not about speed, it was about alignment. It was about recognizing that time is a gift that cannot be stored, only spent, and once spent it does not return. He was not rushing me, he was waking me. The fading of the light was a test of sorts. Would I still believe what I heard once the atmosphere returned to normal? Would I carry urgency when the moment felt less dramatic, when the vision faded and the ordinary returned? His words were not meant to remain in the chapel, they were meant to go with me, into meetings, into designs, into conversations. Urgency was not a mood but a way of living, a way of surrendering daily rather than someday. And there I sat undone, changed, the ordinary world around me but something eternal burning within. The golden light might have faded from the room, but it had not faded from me. The chapel was silent again, but the echo of his voice would not leave. I realized that delay had always been my quiet enemy, but urgency, his urgency, was now my friend. The hour was late, the call was clear, and my heart beat with a new rhythm, the rhythm of now.